Thanks for downloading another segment from the Best of the Classic Metal Show. The Classic Metal Show is heard live on Saturdays from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. Eastern, exclusively at www.theclassicmetalshow.com. And now here's another piece of Classic Metal Show history on the Best of the Classic Metal Show.
The Classic Metal Show.
From the Wicked Sensation release, that's Lynch Mob, and that's She's Evil, But She's Mine. And, Lynch Mob is going out on tour this summer, first time with Oni Logan in a lot of years, and they're going out with Cinderella, Warrant, and Lynam. And I'm looking forward to seeing this Lynch Mob lineup since it's been a long time. And, of course, the main attraction here is George Lynch, and on the phone we got George Lynch with us. Welcome to the Classic Metal Show, George.
How are you doing, man? Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, George, this is about the third time we've had you on the Classic Metal Show, and I want to thank you for being a call-in guest when Benedictum took over the show a few weeks ago.
Ah, that was what that was for. Okay.
Yeah, that's where the Classic Metal Show, and Jeff was very cool about kind of handling the interview and talking about all the things George Lynch and Jeff Pilson and Dokken and all that other good stuff.
Yeah, it's a complicated story, my friend, but we'll get into all that.
All right.
Yeah, Jeff lives right down the street from me, so we're always working together. I mean. The thing is, when I was in Dokken, Jeff and I were really kind of the team that sat there and wrote and really all I did was play guitar and come up with ideas. He did everything else.
Right.
And to this day, I mean, we continue to work that way, even though we don't play in the same band together. And we're always hopeful that someday that might happen again. And he's in Foreigner right now, and Nixon, Ted Nugent, Don's out there with the Dokken cover band. And, I'm doing my thing, but we're hoping at some point we'll be able to put it back together, and because I always loved the chemistry that Jeff and I have had and do have when we work together, because that was really the heart and soul of the band.
Sure, absolutely. Well, you mentioned something kind of interesting there, saying Don is out in the Dokken cover band, but when you were doing, different versions of the Lynch Mob, would you consider that a Lynch Mob cover band?
Absolutely. And it felt like it, it wasn't, I mean, it wasn't that the bands weren't good and the musicians weren't great, and we played the stuff probably better, arguably, than the original band at times, but it's still, people want to see the real deal, They
Sure.
want to hear those old songs that remind them of whatever time in their lives, and with the real guys up there, and there's a lot of those bands out there right now with one original guy, and it's just, they're doing it for practical reasons, but it certainly isn't very gratifying, I don't think, for fans.
Sure.
When you got the Cars out there without Rick Ocasek.
Right, absolutely. Well, you're, obviously I mentioned that you're going to be on the road with Lynch Mob featuring, your original singer, Oni Logan. It's been a lot of years since you guys toured. But you got a good rhythm section with Tommy Aldridge on drums and Marco Mendoza on bass. I mean, you can't beat a more solid unit than that. So I would say that, the Lynch Mob lineup that you're going out with this summer, pretty solid.
And Oni and I were the heart of that band. We really were. I mean, we wrote everything, the old classic singer-guitarist symbiotic relationship, and it worked. It was the best singer-guitar chemistry that I had up to that point in my life, and I was so happy to be in a band with him. And for us to be getting back together now, it's like a dream come true for me. And when we're going out for, I think about 12 or 13 weeks, so it's a pretty extensive tour. And the first half of it, Cinderella is obviously their show, and then Warrant is the second bill, and we're third. But on the second and third leg, we're special guests, so we're direct support. So we go on, get a little more time to explore, and hopefully they'll give us some lights and good sound so we can do what we do. And but as you said, the rhythm section is undeniable. I mean, it's pretty hard to screw that up with Tommy Aldrich and Marco Mendoza. And I don't know if people know who Marco is, but he's really overqualified for any kind of a rock gig. The guy plays, in his off time, he plays a kind of a Latin fusion 6-string thing where he sings and plays bass, and it's unbelievable. So this guy's he's a musician's musician.
Sure, absolutely. Well, as I said, I'm looking forward to seeing that. I mean, I've seen Cinderella and Warrant many times over the last decade, and, obviously you've been out there and, done various versions of the Lynch Mob, but Oni just sort of has a special swagger about him and his vocal style that, I'm excited to see that lineup.
Yeah, when you mentioned the Lynch Mob thing being sort of a cover band, it is true, but I got to say, in the last few years, I haven't gone out as Lynch Mob. I've been going out as just Lynch.
Yeah, right.
So that's different, right?
Well, what I was saying is that Warren and Cinderella have been touring around, as Warren and Cinderella, but you haven't been out there in a long time, as the Lynch Mob is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So so it's very well. We had Oni on the show here a couple of weeks ago, and he was calling us from his farm in Switzerland. And how did you end up putting this thing back together for this summer run?
Well, every year there's been an attempt at putting Dokken back together, and over the last 3 years, and this is the third year that it didn't happen in the 11th hour for various reasons. And when it didn't happen, Lynch Mob was offered the spot by default. Basically, that's what it was all about. And Oni and I had been talking about working on this record that I just finished up, and we were sort of exchanging musical ideas back and forth between Switzerland and California, and it didn't really go anywhere because I kind of fell into a different singer, but that led to a conversation, and that ended up being reforming the band with Tommy and Marco. And Tommy was, when we found out that Mick wasn't available, and he was doing Ted Nugent this summer, was actually the singer in Cinderella's. Tom's idea to get a hold of Tommy. And Tommy and I have a little history when I did the Ozzy auditions and was in the band for like a month back in the day. I can't remember when that was, sometime in the 80s. Tommy was the drummer, so we sort of hit it off. And then beyond that, there was a time when Tommy and I were going to get a band together, kind of a super group, semi-super group, and that also never materialized. But in either case, we sort of had this kind of thing where we always talked about doing something together, and here was a great opportunity.
Well, you mentioned that, for the last 3 years that there's been some force behind trying to reunite the most popular lineup of Dokken. And I spoke with you at the Key Club during the release of the Hollywood Rocks box set a few years ago, where they having that release party. And I was speaking with you up at the bar up in the top level there, and that was one of the things that you had said to me is, "Hey, Dokken's getting back together." Who's driving this effort to reunite the band and put you out on the road?
Well, the main thing that's driving it is the desire by promoters and fans and so forth for it to happen. The opportunities are there, and it's for all bands in our genre, the sort of classic rock or 80s rock that were sold reasonably well and were well exposed and all that. That's all been revived. Guitar music is back, and so there's all these opportunities that present themselves to my management company and Don's management company and so forth, and tours and records and releasing the old catalog and our own TV shows on VH1 and sponsorships and all this and that. So when those things come down the pike, of course, we sit around and we make calls and we sort of kick it around, and it usually gets to the point where everybody has to go, okay, well, we're in agreement in principle on doing this. And then it goes from being an agreement on principle to actually happening, and it usually it has always fallen apart right at the 11th hour, as I said before. So, and I don't want to say why, but it's usually a combination of ego and whatever, politics, I guess.
Well, don't you think at this day and age with you guys, in your more mature years, I will say, Not that
you
you're
can
old.
say it. You can say it. Hey, I just got my AARP card yesterday.
Well, don't you think it's time to put the egos and all that aside and just like, hey, you know what? We created a good thing when we were in our 20s and 30s, and, people want to relive that. Let's just go out there. Let's be friends. Let's just play. Let's just have a good time.
You think it would be that easy, wouldn't it?
Well, why isn't it?
The world should just get along, and there should be no wars and peace and fairies, and everybody will be vegans. And I believe that. I'm an optimist and an idealist, and I totally believe that. But I cannot control other people. I'll just say, for my part, I've been the person that's been down every single time and has pushed the agenda to have this thing happen. Not because I needed to, as much as I'd really like to put a cap on it. Full closure. Just sort of something that I invested. Maybe 15 years of my life in, that was the most successful musical thing that I've achieved, and most widely recognized. And it ended badly, and I'd like it to end not badly, if possible.
Sure.
And that's really my main reason for wanting to do it. I can get along with anybody, so I have no problem with that. If I have to follow the bus in my own way of getting there, I'll do that. There's all these kind of silly things that have been tossed around about that, but I really have no problem with, joining forces with my old bandmates and getting out there and putting a real nice kind of end to the story on it. Not that it has to be the end of the story, but you know what I mean.
Well, let me ask you something, George. As a bandmate with Don and Mick and obviously Jeff, do you actually like these guys as people, or would you just do it and say, I'll just grin and bear it, or what is the story there?
No. In everything we do in life, we have to deal with things adversity and things we don't like, and those things are necessary for us to be, sort of develop, our character and so forth. So, I don't look at it as an uncomfortable thing at all. I deal with all kinds of people in my work, do I relish the idea of getting on a bus with Don and Mick and Jeff? I think it would be interesting. I think they should mount cameras in the bus. Because there'll either be a fist fight or there'll be a love fest.
I thought you did that one time before back in the 80s.
Well, yeah, but that was for different reasons. That won't be happening.
So it would be a rolling reality show for VH1.
Probably pretty damn boring, actually, if you want to know the truth. Bunch of old guys, rock dinosaurs sitting around talking about how it used to be in the 80s.
Sure.
Which actually wouldn't be that, but anyways, it would be hilarious. And actually, everybody, all the members in the band, what made the band cool, one of the things was the chemistry and the different personalities, which makes all bands interesting and cool, And so, you have Mick, who was just kind of the party guy and didn't really want to get in the way of anybody and get involved in any of the drama. There was Jeff, who was, kind of Buddhist yoga guy who was just and very, very talented. Was always cool, calm, and collected, and was usually trying to keep the peace. And it was Don and I are more the A personalities, who were a little more driven, but when it came down to it, just as people, we were all fine. Everybody's funny, everybody's smart, everybody has a good time, and we all kind of take care of our craft and go out there and want to do the best for the band and the fans. But when it gets in, there's another side to it, and it's a business. And when you get into the business part of it, that's usually where the problems are, where the problems that we had anyways.
Sure.
And without getting into nuts and bolts, I'll just say that, there were huge differences of opinion about how things should be, how we should deal with our business.
Sure.
The band would be, and that was difficult. That was difficult. And that was really insurmountable, and I don't know how to deal with it. So at this point, basically any band that you see reforming, I think they'd probably have to do the same thing we'd have to do, and that is at the ground level, get all the rules on paper. Everybody has a nice, clear understanding of how things are going to go, and then you go out and you put it behind you and you go out and kick ass.
Sure, absolutely.
And that's what you have to do.
Well, speaking of that, George, obviously, everybody knows who George Lynch is. If you're a fan of hard rock or metal. I mean, you set the standard, George. I mean, there's no arguing that at all. I mean, when it comes to notable guitarists who have come down the pike over the last, 50 years, people such as a Jimmy Page or Eddie Van Halen or a George Lynch or an Yngwie Malmsteen, you're always in the top 5 or top 10 in that list, and there's no disputing that at all. So with that in mind, have you heard the new Dokken record at all and what John Levin has done guitar-wise on that record?
I haven't heard it. I know it was coming out soon. I didn't even know it was out, but I'm interested and curious, And, I always do listen to his records when they come out just to kind of see how he's evolving and so forth.
Sure. Well, you would think...
So it sounds like you've heard it.
Well, you would think that you were back in the band. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, well, I consider that a tribute, and that's a good thing. I don't really try to recreate what I did 20 years ago or whatever. I just kind of do what I feel like doing, and with a certain amount of intelligence and planning. But I think musicians are just like everybody else. We evolve, and if I were just to stay static and remain exactly the same, which would be impossible for me, then I might as well just get a desk job somewhere.
Sure.
And sell widgets, because
right.
That's why we become musicians, because we're free spirits and life is an adventure and we want to be out there. And one of my biggest influences is Jeff Beck, and you've seen him do that in his career, whether it's really the right thing for him to do business-wise, but he didn't just stick to Beck Truth formula for the next 35 years.
Right. Well,
continue to evolve and become better and better and better, and I respect that so much, because every Beck record to me is an adventure, and there's a lot of bands like that, like the other Beck. His records are interesting, and I guess I could name a bunch of other people if I thought about it for a second. But the point being is that I think there's you could sort of classify musicians and bands in two ways: the more conservative and the more adventurous, and I enjoy being one of those adventurous type musicians that is willing to change it up and take a hit if it doesn't work,
right.
Which I have.
Well, yeah, obviously, I mean, I'm sure you can hardly do an interview without somebody bringing up Smoke This, even though it's been, close to 10 years now.
Oh, there's people were vitriolic about that. I mean, that record. And there were people that loved it, and there were people that just absolutely hated it. And my mistake with that record is I should have called it Lynch Biscuit.
Yeah, exactly. What were you thinking when you decided to take on that project? I mean, seriously.
I wasn't. Sometimes you don't think. Sometimes you just go in and. I got together with some younger guys who were more from that kind of music, and great musicians, and Gabe Rosales on bass, and Kirk Harper on vocals, and these guys were, just unbelievable guys, and great energy, and I just fed off of it, and we went a different way, and it just sort of evolved. It wrote itself, and I loved the record. I thought it was I still love listening to it. I mean, with almost all records, I have problems with aspects of it, and we did have a lot of problems with the recording of that album and so forth, but even the best record that I did, which I think is the Wicked Sensation record, I've got the demos of that, which were better.
Yeah, sure.
So when I listen to that record, I'm like still cringing. I'm going, God damn it, I wish we could have got this on there. You lose a lot of stuff that people never hear that, so they don't know. They have nothing to relate to.
Right, absolutely. Well, you put out the second Lynch Mob record, and, obviously Oni had his problems and left the band, and you got a very similar singer in Robert Mason, and, you put out a good CD with him as well, and, then, of course, that era of that style of music was coming to a close, so obviously you had to do something else, and then the reunited Dokken got back together in 94, and, that's all history. But now I'm
remembering all this as you're telling me, by the way.
Well, as you can tell, I'm a big fan, but... you've come full circle now, and you're going to regale the fans with the hard melodic rock that established you as a guitarist, and people are going to see you on the big stages again with a pretty good package, and you're going to play Rocklahoma and be exposed for the first time to a large audience for in a lot of years.
Expose my pretty good package, yeah, great.
Very nice. So, are you excited about that? You know, being able to go out on this package tour?
Absolutely. I mean, when my wife and I go out and we go to shows and stuff, she sees how much I miss, you know, being out on those stages and being able to have that kind of feedback from a big audience and the energy involved and everything. Of course, I miss that. And you know, when it's funny when guys' success wanes a little bit and they're back in the bars, you know, there's sort of for a while there, guys were sort of, you know, rationalizing it like, you know, oh, this is what we want to do.
Yeah.
You know, nobody wants to play bars.
That's true.
Yeah, it was a tough few years. I mean, well, you know, tough relative to what? To Africans living in caves? No, but, you know, compared to what we had, yeah, we got a little spoiled, but it was okay. I mean, it actually, I think it helped me in a lot of ways as a human being and as a musician. And, you know, the one thing I noticed happened in the kind of the bell curve of my career is that when things got too easy, I got too soft and the music suffered. And I would say a reflection of that would be the second Lynch Mob record. You know, we had lots of money and we had lots of success, and we just thought there was no stopping us. And I think you can see that with a lot of bands, you know, Van Halen and maybe a bunch of other bands that sort of, you know, peaked and waned. You know, if you got 10 mil in the bank, it's pretty hard to be hungry.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and that hunger, I mean, it could stress you out when you start getting older, but it's what drives me, you know, and it's in my, you know, it's what creates the fire, you know.
Sure. Well, what can you tell us about this new project, this Souls of We?
Right. Well, that's a 5-year-long process. It's you know, it started out as just before I did LP, I was working on something at Stonehouse Studios, a studio I built in Northern California called Stonehouse. And Matt Kramer was the vocalist on that project. And since then, I've had many other projects. After LP, I jumped right into a project called Microdot. Then after that, I jumped into a project with the bass player from Snake River Conspiracy, and that was called Band of Flakes. And then I did another project in another studio I built, which we called West Hollywood Starfish as a joke name, just for lack of a better name for, you know. And so I had this huge, you know, body of work that really hadn't gone anywhere and had, you know, really tried to get it signed or anything, just sort of sitting there and never kind of came together. And then I got together with London LeGrand, who since had joined and quit Brides of Destruction, but before Brides of Destruction, him and I got together and started writing. He joined Brides, and that did its thing and burned out, and he came back, and we went back to work. And so I drew from all those other past projects, and we started writing again, and the result was this record called Souls of We. And it's almost indescribable. It's very hard to describe music, but I can't even think of who it would sound like. I mean, because it's not that it's all over the map, but it's got a lot of elements of 70s stuff, which is what I grew up with, but, you know, very modern, or beyond modern. And very unique. You know, the record has its own voice, and it's heavy, but it's got other songs that could be Ben Harper songs, you know, and all good songs. I mean, I think, you know, I've been playing it to my dearest friends who I respect their opinions incredibly highly, and they'll tell me the truth every time. And pretty much across the board, it's you know, they're saying that this is the number 2 record you've ever done in your life out of the 15 or so records I've done, against Wicked Sensation being the number 1. So I'd agree with that assessment, you know. But it's called Let the Truth Be Known, and the actual band that we have now is Johnny Chow on bass, Yael on drums. It's this girl drummer who plays with Dave Grohl and Tom Morello, different projects, and she's incredible. And Johnny Chow's playing with Max Cavalera, and he was also in Fireball Ministry and Systematic. And on the record, we've got quite a few guest artists. We've got people from that were in Mother Love Bone and Joan Jett, the Blackhearts, to the drummer in Seven Dust, and other well-known heavy metal drummers. Drummer from Ingve's on there. The thing was all recorded at Henson Studios and my studio, Lynch Studios, and it was mixed by Mudrock, who mixed Avenged Sevenfold and also Godsmack, among many other bands. And we have a Souls of We website and all that sort of thing. And people can find out about it by just going to my website, georgelynch.com, as well. And it'll all lead you to the same place. And there'll be 30-second little samples of the music up there and things like that, and pictures of the band and so forth. But
well, George, obviously you've tried a lot of different styles of music. Obviously from what you would call straight ahead rock or metal with Dokken and the Lynch Mob, and you did the Smoke This with the rappy thing going on and the Microdot and. And I know being a virtuoso guitarist and expressing the fact that you like to, stretch yourself out and do different things. What is your favorite style of guitar playing? I mean, do you like the straight metal stuff, or do you like the experimental stuff better, or what do you really, when you sit down and play, what do you enjoy just jamming out to?
In one simple word, the blues. Well, that's two words, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, sure.
That's what I grew up on, and that's what I've always kind of fallen back on, is blues-based, late 60s, early 70s hard rock. I'm not a blues ecologist by any means, but it resonates with me, and I have kind of a natural knack for the blues. In fact, I'm talking to a company about doing just a specific, very organic blues-style record, which I would love to do. And the reason I love it is because not only do I feel it, but at the same time, it's also comes very natural to me. Whereas the shreddy rock thing doesn't. I have to work really hard at it. And I just saw Vinnie Moore the other night, in UFO, and a friend of mine's playing bass for him, Rob DeLuca, and I went to see him in Hollywood, and he's the king of these shreddy guys. I mean, it's just there's no way I could touch that. And there's so many of these guys now with Dragon Force and whoever else. I mean, dozens of guys like that are out there, Joe Bonamassa and whoever. And I just really, in the 80s, I really tried to keep up with that. When Eddie came along and really kicked me in the ass, and I had to get my chops up and my tone up, and then Yngwie came along, and I had to do it again. I did a tour with Yngwie. That was a big fat guitar lesson, and it's very, it's a lot of work. It's very stressful and very strenuous, and it's probably not my best suit, because what people like about my playing is maybe a little more feel and a little more organic and just sort of off the cuff. And but I have a nice mixed bag balance between the two, and I think that's what works. But when I just sit down and play, and I'm sitting in my studio or something, my wife is sitting there, she's just like, and I'm playing just through an old Tweed with a 59 Esquire or something, and she says, why don't you just play that kind of stuff? It's so much nicer than all that loud,
right,
hairy music that you play. I go, well, once I get past this next couple of years and I make a dent and I put a cap on my story, then you know what? I'll go live in the teepee in New Mexico with my solar panels and my little Pro Tools and or tape machine or whatever, and I'll make blues and cowboy and Indian records.
Well, George, with this kind of a resurgence or reinterest in what you would call hard melodic rock, with these big fests like the what are they calling it, the East Texas Rock Jam and the Rocklahoma and a lot of these bands, even though they may have only one or two members in them, getting together and just going out and play the music that people remember. What's your thoughts on that? And then of course you got Van Halen with David Lee Roth out there, selling arenas. I mean, is this encouraging to you, or is it something you don't care about, or what's your thoughts on that?
It's encouraging me in the sense that rock, guitar rock, is very important again and just blowing up all over again, which is great, because that's what I do. But I think if you'd asked just about anybody in any of those kind of bands you mentioned, if they genuinely is that their ideal thing, that what they used to do was coming back and now there's a market for it and they're going out and servicing that market, I can't imagine that too many of them would be particularly, they're happy to be working and back out there on the big stages and all that. But how many people are still, living in that era. I mean, I guess, I understand the music itself is important. The songs themselves are important. But I think people should make a distinction between the songs and what the era that created those songs, all the things that were happening at that time. And, we never go back to that. I mean, people say, well, the 80s are coming back. I mean, well, yeah, they are in 2080. Because, the world has completely changed upside down since then. And none of that is relative. And that's why the old songs are important, because they kind of give us a foundation in a society here that doesn't have much culture and much history, really, and much to ground ourselves on. Music is very important to us because it gives us some solidarity and something that we can relate to time-wise. We can triangulate our lives off of it and make sense of things. So in that sense, I completely respect it and understand it. But, all the other things that went along with it, I think it's unimportant, So, I mean, I go see old bands and old shows, because for the same reason. I mean, if I were to get a chance to go see Led Zeppelin or Cream or Jeff Beck, I mean, it would bring back my childhood.
Sure, absolutely.
I got to meet Jeff Beck, actually, when I played the Crossroads, the Eric Clapton event, a few years ago in Texas. Right. And we're driving the van backstage, and I saw him at a trailer, and I said, this is my lifetime idol here. I have to, at the risk of appearing rude, I have to go up and at least say hello or something, I may never get the chance again, so I did. And I literally was in tears, and I know that sounds gay, but I'm sorry, but I mean, I didn't even know what to say. I couldn't speak, and I just, it meant so much to me. I mean, it was the first really rock guitar record I ever bought, the little neighborhood mom and pop record store, and I bought Truth, and I just wore it out and lived on that thing and continues to this day. And, I think if my style is close, what I pull from, if I pulled from anybody more than anyone else, it would have to be Beck.
Sure.
Style, and that's.
Well, have you seen or heard any of the Robert Mason project with Dave Hensarling, the Big Cock band?
Well, I haven't heard it, but just the name got me curious, so I called him up. I said, "What's up with that? Is that for real?" I guess it's all a big joke, so okay. But I don't know how you could stand on stage and call your name of your band that. I guess that's a lot to live up to, dude.
Well, sure, but it's actually
set yourself up for disappointment,
Yeah, sure, but they put out 3 CDs, and they're all 3 are just solid. It's just fun. That's what it all boils down to. It's just a lot of fun.
Well, that's sometimes hard to not take yourself too seriously, I think, and you're right about that. And I tend to do that sometimes with my music. So when I hear something that, and I don't like bands that tend to do that even more than I do, like, let's say, the Dream Theaters of the world, they're just so overly serious about everything. That's not rock and roll to me. Rock and roll is a reflection of life, reality, and it shouldn't be all serious. You should have some looseness in there and some dirtiness and some mistakes. And that's one of the wonderful things about the chemistry I have with London is he's very much like that. He's very loose and just, spur of the moment and, not a care in the world. And I'm sort of the opposite of that. So it's a really interesting mix. And his lyrics reflect that in a big way. But I do agree with you that, you gotta try to keep it fun, and still be, viable musically.
Sure.
When I listen to really trashy bands, I have a hard time appreciating them, even though they might be great. But like Grateful Dead, I can't listen to. And,
who can?
Really kind of stuff that's so rough around the edges, and they don't, they don't put anything into it. It's just all angst and nothing else. I appreciate it on a certain level, but I wouldn't buy it, and I wouldn't listen to it for very long.
Right. Well, without.
But I have the opposite. I have the same kind of reaction with the band like. Dream Theater, which is, sonically perfect, and all the playing is perfect. I mean, the mistake doesn't exist, But it's too pristine and it's too clinical, and I think that's not right either. In my case.
Well, without trying to pressure you into sounding trendy or hip at all, is there any current bands out there that you're enjoying and think to yourself, "Damn, those guys got something going on"?
Well, yeah, quite a few. I mean. Well, see, one of the most recent things I picked up was, this is going to sound strange because they're not very well known, but a band called Porcupine Tree.
Yeah, I know of them.
You do? Okay.
Yep.
They're sort of Toolish in a way, I
Sure.
think, and maybe a little Muse-ish. I mean, I love Muse.
Right.
On the metal scene, I like Children of Bodom just because I really like Alexi as a guitar player. I think he's like the new Randy Rhoads kind of, in a certain way. And then, but then on the organic level, there's all these jam bands, like Government Mule, people like that just kind of take me back to when I was 17, and that's all that existed, was jam bands in that era. Everybody jammed. Nobody had songs. You just got up and jammed and created a song.
Sure.
And I think that's sort of a lost art. So that was kind of neat to see that sort of evolve over the last 10 years. That bands are brave enough to do that, because it takes a lot of courage to be able to go up and, it's one thing to go up and be a new band and, have the right hairstyle and the right clothes and have your backing tracks and this monster production and Pro Tools and everything's fixed, and, you don't need a safety net, because it's all there, but when you see a band just go out there and just wing it, you really got to have a lot of chops and faith in yourself, because actually in Dokken we used to do that a lot too. We used to do I sort of insisted we do this jam thing, which Don never really liked because it's not fun for singers, because unless you're Ella Fitzgerald, it's hard to jam when you're a singer. But I just take a break for a while, Don, before we do Mr. Scary, and let us just every night just go off and do something.
Right.
And that was my favorite spot of the night, every night. And it wasn't necessarily the audience's favorite moment, because they had no idea what the hell was going on.
Well, I think
we weren't playing anything recognizable. I'd come up with a riff, and maybe we'd talk about it before we go out on stage and I'll warm it up. I'd say, hey, let's try something like this, and we go out and just see where it went.
Well, I think you had that opportunity, from the Dysfunctional release with like Too High to Fly with that mid-section break there.
Mm-hmm.
That was good.
It's very hard to capture that in the studio. I've never, that wouldn't be, maybe that is the closest example of anything that we've done on a record, but that to me would be a great challenge to actually achieve that in the studio. But to find somebody that's got the balls to actually give it a shot would be difficult to convince people. I think you'd have to be a very successful band like Rage or Against the Machine or something, and then just have the luck that a band like that or Pearl Jam that would have the luxury of failing, because when you're at a lower level, you don't have the luxury of failing.
Sure.
It isn't an option. Unless you're extremely courageous and, willing to sacrifice everything for that luxury.
Excellent, George. Well, George, I know I'm taking up a bit of your time here, and I appreciate you being so open and candid about all these inquiries and questions. And, again, I'm looking forward to seeing the Lynch Mob out there on the road for the first time in a long time with Oni on lead vocal. Are you concerned about his vocal abilities? I haven't seen or heard anything from Oni in years.
Well, that makes two of us. I'm sure we'll be fine. I just want to mention, though, that, we're going to have it'll be old school, big arena rock, and I'll have a wall of Randall Lynch boxes up there and my ESPs. And I just did want to throw in a quick, just to mention something very quickly. I have a dojo, online guitar school that, in case there's any aspiring guitarists out there that want to look into taking a private lesson from George Lynch, via video, via the internet. That's available at georgelynch.com.
Who's
he?
Check
that out. Yeah, because I've had people over the years ask me. I've actually given a few. I had this one extremely rich guy that was involved with Donald Trump, and his son was like 15, and he idolized me, and he flew him out in a private jet, put him in a limo, put him up at the Ritz-Carlton at 15 years old, and the guy spent like a couple of days with me, and it was just like a weekend guitar lesson with George, and they paid me, sinful amounts of money to do that, which I was very happy about taking. But but we've remained friends to this day. But I'm just saying, over the years, people have asked me about this, and I thought about it. When I go, well, why not? Well, couldn't I sort of do this online, and that way you're sort of getting that, but for it's $29.95 instead of $15,000.
Sure.
And it's very intimate, and I do it in my home studio, and we break down songwriting, obviously technique, and gear stuff. I mean, we just run the gamut. So, just thought I'd mention, put a plug in there. Right?
Sure, why not? You got the time. You got the time, and you got the air. So plug away, George.
Okay. Well, I don't want to take advantage.
That's cool. Well, we're always glad to have George Lynch on the Classic Metal Show, and again, we appreciate you taking some time out and being part of the Benedictum thing they did a few weeks ago, and of course talking to us here live and all that good stuff. And again, looking forward to the Lynch Mob thing this summer, and also checking out the Souls of We, and a lot of good things George Lynch driven. Yeah,
there's a lot on my plate. Did they play Balls to the Walls for you?
Yes, they did, absolutely.
Benedictine?
Yep.
That's the thing, when I do these projects for these other bands, they never send me the record. So I never get to hear what I did.
You haven't heard it yet?
How does it sound?
It sounds excellent. The whole CD kicks ass.
Good. All right. Cool. I just wanted to make sure.
Very cool. Well, Jeff is a good friend of mine, and he's a good guy. And again, George, we appreciate it. So go over and check out George Lynch over at georgelynch.com. And if you want to take some online guitar lessons, just click on the dojo link over there and see George out on the road this summer and pick up the Souls of We. How about that for a plug?
All right. I appreciate that. And I'll give you the $20 when I see you.
All right. Excellent.
Yeah.
All right, George.
Well, we'll see you on the road this summer.
Absolutely. Well, we always let the artist pick a departing song and take us out of the interview. So what would you like us to play?
How about a band called Boomerang? Do you remember them?
Yeah, just vaguely.
You probably don't have that record, though.
No. Why don't you give us something you played on?
Oh, you don't want to hear anything I played on.
Sure.
Yeah, this is turning in those Enough About Me interviews. What do you think of my latest record? Yeah. Let's see. What did I play on? I can't remember.
Well, how about something off of Sacred Groove? How about that?
Yeah. Do the one with Ray Gillen.
That's a perfect cut.
Which is, what was that called?
I'll tell you in a second.
That's the thing, when you get old, your memory goes. That's the first thing that goes. As long as the other thing still works, I'm not worried about it.
I hear you, George. All right. All right, George. Well, again, we appreciate you taking the time, and we'll take the interview out with from the Sacred Groove CD. How about that?
There you go.
All right, well, it's George Lynch exclusively here on your Classic Metal Show. Thanks for checking out the best of the Classic Metal Show. You can tune into the Classic Metal Show live every Saturday night from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. Eastern.